Welcome to Cardiff in Wales, a picturesque city in the United Kingdom. Wales has plenty going for it. Kind-hearted locals, amazing scenery, and some pretty excellent stories from the medieval times. The Middle Ages were a very interesting time period. It was a time in European history between the year 400 and 1500 CE. It occurred between the fall of the Roman Empire and the Renaissance. Now, during the Middle Ages, people were fighting in a war called the Crusades, and constant fighting did not keep people in the highest of spirits. The different categories of status went king, lord, knight, vassals, who were servants to the lords, and peasants. No matter what category you were born into, you stayed there. You didn't have much choice over your own life and what you did. It was the highest honor to be a knight. While all the peasants were hiding behind the safety of the castle walls, you went out and fought to save your kingdom. Now, kings had a bit of a battle. They wanted to show how wealthy they were, so they built castles like this one. The bigger the castle, it showed how much more money you had than the other kings. So kings built one, and then another king built another one, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger. During the 1300s, the Middle Ages were going through a very dark time. War and disease had taken over, and many people had died from something called the plague or the Black Death. In the 1400s, the Middle Ages were coming to an end, and finally Britain was becoming a brand new place. As you can tell, the medieval times were not a very pleasant time to be living in. That's why I think that people made all these fairy tales about kings and queens and princes and princesses to make it seem like the medieval times were a much nicer place. But what is a fairy tale? Well, a fairy tale is a folk legend or a story that's been passed down through generations, normally with an interesting character that teaches us a moral or a lesson. But they weren't always like the nice bedtime stories we have that give us nice warm fuzzies. They used to be quite scary and a little bit gruesome, made for adults. The main people that we know that wrote them back in the 1800s were Hans Christian Andersen and the Grimm brothers, but they had slightly different endings. They wrote the classics like The Little Mermaid, Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel. But there's an even older one than that, one that goes back 1,154 years ago. It's a version of Cinderella that was written in China, but I think it would have been maybe a little bit different to the one we know today. But what I do know is they're always based on a beautiful castle. Oh, much like this one I found right now. Let's go have a look. Here I am at the Castle Coch in Wales. Now the story I'm going to tell you is the tale of King Arthur and the Sword in the Stone. Now the reason I'm telling you this story is because his name Arthur derives from the Welsh words bear and gold. Once upon a time there lived a king called King Uther, and he was the ruler of Britain. The king was worried. He was getting older in age and he did not have a child to rule after him. The king was madly in love with a woman called Ygritte. King Uther had to steal Ygritte away from her husband. He knew it was wrong, but he did not care. With the help of a magician called Merlin, he was able to win over the heart of his love. But he had to make a deal with Merlin. The price of my help is the ownership of your firstborn child. Eager to see Ygritte, he agreed quickly. A year later, Ygritte gave birth to the son of the king. Forgetting his promise, King Uther reluctantly gave their son over to Merlin. Merlin promised that it was for the child's own good. But after baby Arthur was born, Merlin secretly took him to be raised in the castle of Sir Ector, who was a friend of the king. Arthur was raised in this castle. No one apart from Merlin knew his true identity. Ector had a son of his own named Sir Kay. Sir Kay and his friends were horrible to Arthur, for they thought he had no parents, and his adopted parents looked down on him. Arthur grew up living in shame, having no idea who his real family was. King Uther grew unwell. His heartbreak of losing his child seemed to make him very sick. Eventually he passed away. With no one to step in to lead the kingdom, the country fell into despair. Everyone felt that they were best fit to rule Britain, which led to no one coming to an agreement. When they had reached their wits' end, the nobles called on Merlin to solve their problem. Knowing that Arthur was safe, he placed a large stone in the churchyard of Westminster. Stuck inside that stone was a sword. On the stone it read, "Whoso pulleth out the sword from this stone is right-wise king born of England." The sword was magic. Merlin explained, and he only knew who was fit to rule England, and he could only pull it out from the stone. Kings, knights, lords, and other men from far away came to try and pull the sword from the stone, but not even the strongest men could do it. None were worthy enough. Eventually, the sword became forgotten and England fell into greater ruin. As the boy Arthur grew older, Merlin went to him. Merlin did not age, for his magic keeps him young. The two of them became great friends. Merlin taught and trained Arthur and helped him to become a strong and confident man, to be able to reach his true potential so that one day he could rule over Britain. One day, when Arthur was 15, Merlin brought him before the stone. News had spread to around the world that an unknown warrior had come to claim the sword. When people saw that it was Arthur, they laughed and taunted him. No one believed that he could do it, not even himself. Sir Kay, in his pompous way, tried the stone first to prove that he was stronger than Arthur. It did not budge. It was Arthur's moment of truth. He put both hands on the handle, and with what seemed like the ease of lifting a feather, he pulled that sword from the stone. The crowd went silent, not from shock, but from regret. They had treated this man with such dishonor, but now they will do what he wishes, for now he has become the King of Britain. Okay, now it's time for some acting, so get on your drama shoes. Here is how the activity will go. You'll be getting into pairs and choose who's A and who's B. You'll be given a 4-line script, 2 lines for A, 2 lines for B. You need to read it and then interpret that script, and then you get to choose exactly how you think those characters will say it. Remember to use emotion, to use actions. Think about how those words should be said. Now, when you've had time to practice, you should share them all to the class and see how you did them all differently. Teachers, the script is in the resources for this week. Have fun! Phew! Oh, that was fun. How did yours go? Right, now that you've heard the story and you've had a chance to become the characters yourself, we're going to be doing a comprehension activity. You will be summarising the tale of King Arthur into a comic strip. Yes, how fun, I know. Now, before we get started, here are some things that we need to remember when we're summarising. Now go and have fun making your comic strips. I'm sure that your teachers and your classmates would love to see them all beautifully presented. And maybe if they're really good, they might even go up on the wall. Who knows? And as always, I would love to see the work that you have done. So teachers, head on over to the website and have a look at how you can send me some of your students' work. All right guys, thanks for coming with me on this adventure. Fare thee well.